But when I knew that they were starting their show, I had had this melody in my head for a long time that I knew would be good for some sort of fantasy show. And when Matt told me about the show, I said, "Do you need a theme song?" And he was like, "Well, actually, yeah, we don't have one."
Welcome to the Character Sheet, Comic Book's home for all your tabletop and fantasy news, and our new interview show, One Shot, a PvP-based interview show. And our first guest, you may know him from his contributions to the music of Critical Role. You may know him from his new single, Digging in the Dust. It is Jason Charles Miller. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, am I guest number one?
You are guest number one on this new format of show.
Nice. All right.
And for the show, we will be using a battle map.
There it is.
So of course, known for your music. So when we had Jason on, we realized the only thing that made sense for PvP was to have a battle of the bands. So we have two bards.
Of course.
And we've got, we have Jason playing Cleef Trips. I'll flash his character sheet up on the screen and post here. A intimidating sort of almost barbarian from the frosty north of Icewind Dales, kind of a Skald vibe to him.
Yes, totally Skald.
And then a little more trickstery halfling fellow named Ram Seish, who is definitely not the stand-in for Sam Reich until we interview him. But we meet up in the city of Suzail and Cormyr, because if I have to run one more adventure on the Sword Coast, my soul may leave my body. And
hey man, it's a great coast to run adventures on.
It's a great coast, and we've just been there for so long.
Mm-hmm. The best coast.
I mean, if you have to be on a coast in the Forgotten Realms, that's the one. But we are in the streets of Suzail. We've gathered a large crowd around us as we have decided to engage in a bit of a mock public duel to drum up business for our evening show. We are a two-man band.
Oh.
And so as part of this, we will be doing a little bit of stage combat. We just like normal combat, except all damage will be non-lethal, and we're going to half spell damage because we don't want to. We're only level 3. We don't really want to run around and immediately one-shot each other and have a one-question interview.
Right.
So you start out with Ram and Cleef on the streets of Suzail, and let's do a little initiative roll, and then we'll get these questions going.
Okay.
All right, so that is a mighty 9 for me.
What do you know? Here we come. Well, 5. Even with my initiative bonus, it's only a 7.
All right, so
you're going first.
Go first. Okay, so Ram starts a few. He looks around at the crowd, sort of plays to the crowd for a second, and this is ostensibly over sort of a game of chance gone awry is the backstory we're using.
Right, you cheated me, sir.
Exactly.
How dare you?
Ram looks at you and says, "I have nothing up my sleeve except these cards," and casts card spray. A giant fan of cards spanning out from his fingertips. The spell will require, let me double check that I'm doing it correctly. Yes, a Constitution saving throw from Cleef.
Okay. Yes, 21 with my bonus.
Oh,
aha!
Wow. This will be not very much damage at all. It will be this halved. Oh, well, that's a good start. So 14 halved to 7, but because it's a spell, halved further to 4. So 4 damage. Okay. And then Ram will say, no, time for a bold tactical repositioning, and tuck himself slightly around the corner. But after those cards spray out, let's take one brief second to talk about another interesting meeting, and that is a lot of people know you as the person behind some of the most known music from Critical Role. So how did you first get to know that cast of characters? How did you get to know the Critical Role cast?
Well, I've been a voice actor for over 20 years. Mm-hmm. And I knew, when they first started, I think I knew every cast member but one personally already. Both Sam and Liam had directed me in anime and video games. I knew Marisha initially through Matthew. I was probably closest with Matthew and Taliesin, because Taliesin actually gave me my very first voice acting role in an anime in Hellsing. He directed me in one of the first Hellsing animes. And so when we had all kind of played D&D together, we were doing some streams here and there, some charity streams, things like that. But I knew that that was their core group. I knew Travis and Laura not as well, and I didn't know Ashley yet. But when I knew that they were starting their show, I had had this melody in my head for a long time that I knew would be good for some sort of fantasy show. And when Matt told me about the show, I said, "Do you need a theme song?" And he was like, "Well, actually, yeah, we don't have one." So it was sort of a case of right place, right time. And the very first version of what became the campaign 1 theme was just a melody I had in my head for a long time, and then I built it up orchestrally, and then we sort of redid it for later in the campaign. I think around episode 46 or something, we redid it. And then when they launched Vox Machina, I did a jazz version for that. When campaign 2 started, I did, they wanted a sort of 70s Dallas style version of that. And then later in campaign 2, Sam came to me and said, "Hey, listen, I took your original theme and I sort of sung a melody on top of it and wrote some words." And I said, "That's great. Let's get together and hash that out. Let's sort of finish that." So we got together and finished what would become Your Turn to Roll, which then, when the Legend of Vox Machina animated series came out, Neil Acree, the composer for that show, who's also a fan of Critical Role, he took Your Turn to Roll and turned that into the orchestral opening theme of the Legend of Vox Machina. So I am a co-writer on that theme as well. So talk about being in the right place at the right time, and then that becoming something, you know, cool to live on for many years. That's what
it turned out amazing. I think it's the song people still most associate with the show to this day.
That's great.
All right, but now it is Cleef's turn for some revenge. Where would you like to move Cleef?
It is. Well, Cleef is more of a brute. So he is going to move as close to you as possible. So if his movement is, he's a human. Yeah. So can he move all the way to you and still swing? Can he go 30? Are you 30 away?
He's 30 there. I think, you know what? Let's just say, because Sam, or sorry, definitely not Sam, Ram didn't mean to be this cowardly. He will go to there.
Okay. I mean, this is a show after all.
He sees that you might not quite have the distance, and he's like, "Oh," and he stumbles forward.
Yes. Okay. So I'm going to take out my mighty spear and thrust. So on, can I add the +5 bonus that I have to the roll by just adding +5?
You certainly can.
I think it worked. 23. Well, I mean,
a palpable hit.
Yeah, it's quite a clear hit. And then we will roll for damage, which is D6 +5. Oops, sorry. There we go. 9 points of damage, sir.
All right. Taking the damage, he will sort of somehow dodge a tiny bit out of the way, issuing the cut. Well, and he'll take 6 less damage, saying that, "I don't know how you missed me. I've been here the whole time." But you do 3 damage through, and he's used up a bardic inspiration for cutting words. And he says, also, apropos of nothing, you've created music for shows like Critical Role and several other actual plays and live streams and D&D products. So in your opinion, what makes for a good tabletop RPG soundtrack? And, you know, what do you like to have playing when you are running a session at your table?
Yes. Well, it's funny you mention other shows, because when I looked back and I realized in the Geek and Sundry on Twitch heyday, I believe that combined with alpha, I wrote maybe 14 theme songs for Geek and Sundry, all told. But there's a brand new show I'm on Above Board TV called Dungeon Call, and I wrote the theme song for that too. So you'll have to check that out because that's my latest foray into Dungeons and Dragons actual play theme song. So you'll
put a link to that in the description.
The song and the show. And the cool thing about that show is we film it on a green screen with the Unreal Engine. So we're looking at ourselves and greens behind us, but when you're watching as the audience, you see our environment and there's a moving camera. So you can actually see the environment move behind us. It's really neat.
Oh, that sounds amazing. I will put the link in the description so everyone can check that out because that sounds fantastic.
It's really cool. And there's other voice, the DM for that is Travis Oates, who is the longtime voice of Piglet in Winnie the Pooh.
Oh, wow.
And then and Becca Scott, who you might remember from Geek and Sundry, also is another cast member on that show.
And Good Time Society and many things.
Exactly. Yes. Many things. So that's a show that just launched. So we're trying to get the word out on that one. But what I like to have playing is I will often, I love to have obviously fantasy music, fantasy soundtracks playing. I tend to, when I'm running a game for friends, or if I'm running something like a D&D in a castle or something like that, I will find music that is generally themed for where they're going to be. Like if they're in a forest, I'll find kind of foresty type stuff with maybe even sound effects sprinkled in. I'll find epic combat music that's available. And I haven't composed long-term music like that other than when I did the score for Undeadwood for Critical Role, for the Critical Role channel. But so I don't compose my own music for my home games. That would be probably excessive. but there's so much great stuff out there that you can find even on a YouTube search, which, as long as the royalties are being paid, then that's what I care about. Wow, that the creators are getting their proper credit and payment.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And yes, I remember some of those things on the Undead one, or the Undeadwood one. I remember a lot because I remember being a big fan of that because our friend of the channel, Ivan Van Norman, was hanging out as the sort of inexplicable bartender for several episodes.
Exactly, there to explain the rules and
just occasionally intervene. But
yeah.
All right. Well, after taking a vicious but slightly modified hit, Ram Saish will pull out a very thin stiletto dagger and attempt something of his own. We'll see if he is successful when he tries it.
Oh,
apparently we just roll 18s to hit.
I guess so. You got me.
Well, sadly, he is not as good at what you might call melee.
By the way, that 6 from the cutting words, was that damage, or that you use that to have?
So that's the new cutting words is cool. Is you can use it as a bardic inspiration on a reaction, and it will reduce a d6, because that's my current inspiration dice, of damage from a damage roll, or you can reduce d6 from a attack roll or a saving throw from a creature within 60 feet.
Okay.
And that's College of the Lore Bard. That's their new version of cutting words, which is pretty interesting. I like it, and it felt thematic for what Ram Saish.
Ram, yes.
I don't know why I did this to myself, but I did. As he unleashes a mighty 4 damage onto you.
Ugh. He's merely a flesh wound.
Yes. Let's see. He will he will sort of preen in posture and just sort of stay in your threatened area, but circle around. Just sort of some busy work. Just jazz hands.
Yes. You know what? I will do the same, because we are, after all, this is a show for the people.
And he reaches out and he says, wait, before you do that, something just came to mind. And that is, people always ask musicians about their desert island discs. But as a big D&D fan, what would your desert island editions be? If you could pick 3 of any edition of any RPG to have on a desert island with your playgroup, what 3 games are you taking to that island?
You know, I think I'm taking 2nd edition D&D.
The classic.
Because that is in my DNA, right? It's like still there. I think that I'm taking Gamma World.
Oh, a fun one.
Yeah.
A dangerous one and a fun one.
It is. It's very dangerous. And I think for the 3rd one, I'm going to go. I think I'm taking Boot Hill.
Oh, nice. I haven't thought of Boot Hill in a little while, but that is a fun game too.
Yeah. Yeah. The very first Western RPG.
Yeah. Man, that's...
you know, a lot of those were sort of rules light or sort of rules interpretation, you know, left up to your own devices. So I figure if I'm on an island, you know, we're making things up as we go.
Yeah, no, but those are all great answers. Oh man, I remember playing Gamma World in high school, and I'm remembering like thinking this was quite a lot of times for my character to die.
Yeah, those early, a lot of the, like even first edition D&D, I mean, you died a lot.
You died a lot, yeah.
Yeah, and in Gamma World, your character could even die before you began.
Yes, I think it and Call of Cthulhu first edition were games where you could die in character creation, which I thought was hilarious.
Yes, Gamma World was the same way, where if you rolled too many mutations that either canceled each other out in a bad way or just made you too useless, you could actually die and then roll again.
Nice. All right, well, Ram has pranced around you, kind of played up to the crowd. It is back to Cleef's turn.
All right, how dare you? Once again, this is where Cleef shines. He is a hand-to-hand combat man, so he's going to take another stab with his spear at you and see what happens. Aha! Again.
Oh, almost, yeah. Well, we were one away from being able to see the cool new crit rules for the
dang
the
it.
2024 equipment. But yes, that definitely hits.
All right, let me add in my damage here. Ooh, 11 points of piercing damage.
Actually, he has no choice but to try and attempt to use his second body inspiration.
Yes, I think that's going to put you unconscious, is it not?
It's close because I reduce it to 3. If I take this, I will have 3 health left. So I need to let's try and mitigate some of it as he tries to dodge back. Let's see if he's successful. Well, sort of successful. So he's got 7 health currently.
Okay,
a mighty 7 health left.
Okay,
he ducks out of the way and tries to say some sort of witty insult, but gets kind of like cold-cocked by the butt end of your spear. Takes a little less damage, but as he staggers back, clutching the wound in his chest dramatically, he says, also, by the way, you've got a love of sci-fi as well, because you've created, for example, the epic Klingon anthem of Steel and Flame for Star Trek Online. And, of course, you've done work on the Cyberpunk 2077 soundtrack. Does that love of sci-fi inspire the sort of dead astronaut motif of digging in the dust?
It does. You know, Andrew Fogel, who I have now worked on 6 music videos with, that video was really his brainchild. The song Digging in the Dust is more about a relationship that is already dead. Both sides know the relationship is over, but neither one wants to admit it. But the video kind of turns it on its head, because the video is about how love conquers all and love lasts beyond even death. But there's also a subtle nod to Doctor Who in there too. A lot of people picked up on that.
Yes. Oh, yeah. The astronaut is.
Yeah, as well. So I'm a huge Doctor Who fan. You know, everything in that video pretty much encapsulates who I am. So you know, when he came to me with that idea, I overwhelmingly was like, yes, I'm in, let's do this. And the funny thing is the actor, Shane, he's the one in the spacesuit. I said, do you want me to be out in the spacesuit? And he goes, well, you can camp out with us for 2.5, 3 days in the desert, or we can put an actor in the spacesuit. And I said, you know what? I think for this one, let's give another actor some work.
Yeah, makes sense. It's very, very generous. But you're right. Now that you say that, I will never be able to picture that video again without just looking for the little blinking battery bar on the neck of the astronaut from the Silence episode of Doctor Who.
Right. Oh, man. Yeah.
That's it. But excellent. But all right. So with that, Ram has taken quite a lot of damage. It's time to make another big display. He goes, oh, brute strength might not be everything when you've got a dazzling array of skills, and he unleashes a color spray at you.
Ah,
a Constitution saving throw, please.
Here we go. And now I know I can add in my bonus. So here we go. I think I made it.
You definitely made it. So you see just an array of flashing colorful lights sort of make you blink, but you shrug it off, and it kind of like sputters and fizzles at the tips of Ram's fingers, and he just sort of looks at it and goes, well, I meant to do that. It was a distraction so I could ask you this. That is, have you ever had a song or even an album that was inspired by something, an event, or a character that you played or was played at your D&D table?
Oh, interesting. Well, not for my solo music, but during lockdown, speaking of the Sword Coast, the folks over at the game Idle Champions of the Forgotten Realms, they approached me and said, listen, you know, it's lockdown. We have this marketing money that we normally spend at conventions, but what we'd like to do is boost up our Twitch presence. And we'd like to talk to you about doing a show. Do you have any ideas for doing a show? And I said, why don't we do a songwriting show where, you know, put me on with a lore master of some sort from your game and company, and you guys have the licenses to so many items in D&D, monsters, characters, heroes. Let's write a song every week about a different thing from D&D, and we'll write it with the audience. So it'll be a 2-hour show, and within 2 hours, we will have written a song. The audience can give us suggestions along the way. And they thought I was a little bit nuts, but we did it anyway. And we signed a contract for 10 episodes, and we ended up doing 75 episodes. And then we went back, and I recorded 27 of those songs, which you can now hear on the jukebox when you play the game Idle Champions of the Forgotten Realms. So I would say, yes, I have written 75 songs that were inspired directly by Dungeons and Dragons characters, but nothing actually from a game that I ran or was in.
I mean, I still feel like that would probably count, especially since you did 75 of them.
Yeah.
All right. And with that, Cleef is now staring down a apparently quite injured Ram Saish, and it is his turn again.
He lifts his spear. He takes his spear in 2 hands and thrusts downward. There we go. And he gets an 8.
I'm holding. Oh, so just Ram barely staggers away and is like, he was trying to like stagger into the spear, but like there was a miscommunication. And so he just sort of staggers over the spear and trips.
Yes.
But as he falls down, he goes, oh, a most palpable hit. And he sort of falls down and reaches his hand up into the air and says, before I pass, I'd just like to say, you know, we've talked about your Desert Island RPGs, but what about your Desert Island Playgroup? If you could play with anyone in the world at your play table, who's in your dream campaign, and are you playing or are you the DM?
Oh gosh. I would love to. I feel like here's what would happen. Whoever is in my dream campaign, they would probably convince me to be the DM. I wouldn't want to be the DM, but I feel like ultimately I would be convinced that I would be the DM. And I think that my dream team would include Abraham Lincoln, George Washington, Joan of Arc, and let me think, Cleopatra.
That's a pretty solid party.
Yeah.
Need a translator or two somewhere in there, but
yeah, but you know, I mean, this is a dream, right? So we're using an international Star Trek translator.
Oh yeah, well, perfect. There you go. It's happening in the holodeck somewhere. Perfect. Yeah, most people don't think about which D&D edition Abraham Lincoln would play, but I mean, I think
he'd play second, and I think that George Washington would play first.
You know who's the fourth edition guy for sure? Teddy Roosevelt. So do you know who the fourth edition guy for sure? It's Teddy Roosevelt.
Oh, definitely.
Big 40 guy.
He's just blasting stuff right and left.
He's playing that Avenger class.
We can thank him for our national parks. We really can.
Yeah, weirdly, a president that did a lot in a very short amount of time.
And even got shot while giving a speech.
And kept on speaking.
Finished the speech and then went to the hospital.
Yes. Well, but by that time, they learned from McKinley that when your president gets shot, you don't just put mustard on it and hope it goes away.
Yeah.
But as he collapses to the ground to try and make it show, he hides his fingers from the crowd, wiggles them, and under his breath casts Enlarge on you. And he goes, "Oh no, he's become more powerful than ever." And
now
so on Cleef's Cleef is Enlargened.
And does that give me any bonuses to strength?
Yes, you will get a double check here, because I think this is one that got tweaked, and my memory is still all the old versions. You will get an additional 1d4 on damage, and currently you will also have advantage to attack me because I am prone.
All right. Well, I'm going to roll twice then. My first roll, I get a natural 1, so I'm glad I had advantage. My second roll. What? That can't be right. But you know what? We're gonna follow the die. So I rolled 2 natural 1s in a row.
All right. I will say, go ahead and roll me 2d6 plus 5 against yourself.
Oh boy.
As we'll say that you've tried to plunge the spear down and it's ricocheted off the cobblestones.
That's what happens when you roll natural 1. You hurt yourself with your own weapon. 15!
So I think now both fighters, badly injured, collapsed on the floor and what turned into a very unlikely standoff, a sort of a Mexican standoff of bleeding out. Ram reaches over and points at his enemy and says, "One final thing before I pass, and that is, for fans that mainly know you through your connections to Critical Role and your music that you've made for them, what can they expect if they go to see you during your upcoming and current tour?"
Well, it really depends on where you're seeing me. I just got back from Japan, where I sang 2 nights at the Yokohama Arena, all of the songs that I sing in the Final Fantasy 14 soundtrack. If I'm headlining, I like to do a smattering of stuff from my solo career, stuff from my old band, Godhead, and then if I can, I'll do a Final Fantasy 14 song. Maybe I'll do something from the Idle Champions, or maybe I'll do something from Cyberpunk that I co-wrote. So I try to give everybody a little bit of what they're looking for. And it's fun when I'm on tour and I look down and I see like somebody with a D&D shirt on and somebody with a Final Fantasy 14 shirt on and somebody with a Leonard Skinner shirt on. Like I know like who they're here for and what they want to hear. So it's fun when all of my worlds come together like that.
All right. And with that, both men give out their last breath before leaping back to their feet and going, acting!
Tonight at 6.
Tonight at 6 at the Drunk Siren.
Only 10 copper pieces each.
Yes, Ram and Cleef. Make sure you don't miss it. And with that, we have concluded the first ever one-shot PvP interview. And all the things we talked about will be in the description below. So we'll have some, and we'll also put a link, of course, to the new video for Digging the Dust, because it's a fantastic video everyone should watch.
Thank you.
Jason, I can't thank you enough for doing this, for being part of our first ever one-shot interview. This was an absolute blast.
I had a lot of fun. I hope that it's a trendsetter.
And of course, for people watching, you can do the liking and the subscribing and all the YouTube stuff. And we will be back with another video tomorrow. And until then, just stay safe, everybody.